Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, we're back again, and I'm so glad to have you with me here for the latest Lance Wellnow Show live podcast. One of the fastest growing podcasts, burning up the news and media arena of podcast land, floating somewhere between the 30s, 40s, and 50s. We're going to break ourselves down. We're all $250,000 a month, but we're pushing the envelope, people, because we really believe that a prophetic perspective and an optimistic voice is needed, because the news can be rather depressing. Now, how do you merge this bad news, darkness getting darker, lawlessness increasing? How do we take that reality, kind of analyze it, and at the same time find a way of seeing these things that produces whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are of good report, think on these things. You see, we have a tension here because we're supposed to be guarding our minds from what is, negative. And at the same time, if something negative is going on, if you're going to the doctor and you say, well, I never go to the doctor because I don't want to hear bad news. Well, that's kind of dumb. You might want to go to the doctor just to find out what the reality of a situation is, and then you interpret it the way you want and take action. So that's the goal of this broadcast, is to kind of give you my perspective, a Pentecostal flair. You see, evangelicals think deeply and profoundly. Catholics think with tremendous historical sagacity, and there's an element of great scholarship there, but Pentecostals have more fun. So I am committed to having a joyful exegesis of current events. And so I have with me my trusty associate, Mercedes Sparks, who is...
I thought you were going to say sidekick.
I was going to say sidekick. I was going to say sidekick, but I didn't want to hear later on some correction about how I described you.
Yeah, I'm the Robin to your Batman.
Thank you very much.
There you
go. Okay, so I want to talk to you about, speaking of spiritual things. We didn't touch, I heard very few people talk seriously about the Astroworld fallout. That's the exorcists and demonologists are breaking down the satanic influence of the Travis Scott's deadly concert. Now, this happened in Texas. This happened in, wasn't it Houston?
Oh, that was Houston, yeah.
Yeah. And so here you got this, we have demonology experts talking to the Daily Wire, and I think there's 8 dead and hundreds injured at this Travis Scott's Astroworld Festival.
It was awful. Like, you know me, I like to watch my TikTok. And like pretty much right after it happened, there's videos of people getting up on like the camera stand, screaming at the cameraman, people are dying. And the whole crowd, it just moves like a giant mass. And so people were literally crushed to death. I mean, as young as, I think I saw a 9 or 10-year-old that was killed. I mean, when you send your child to a concert, you don't think this is going to happen. But Lance, the photos of this place, I don't know if our team's got them, we can put them up on Liftable, but I mean, it looks like it's a portal to hell. It says in the middle of the screen, we'll see you on the other side. It's a giant skull type of a head that they have to walk through. I mean, it's just like, if you know anything about, the devil at all, you don't even have to be a Christian. You're kind of like, this seems really demonic. And it was just horrendous. And the guy didn't stop the show, and people are screaming. I mean, it was insane to see like firsthand videos from there.
Well, users were quick to point out what appears to be a rendering of Travis Scott as a demon on an album cover for a song he debuted at the concert. And this one, Father John Sada, who is a Catholic exorcist out of a diocese in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, he said whether he is like the other rock stars that do these occult transactions when they're involved with drugs, hallucinogenics, and they try to do these deals with occult incantations for power and success, and they actually align themselves up with demonic influence. And he said whether that was done here or not, the images certainly project satanic practices and exalting the demonic, so that if he was summoning, if not willingly, then unaware, he opened a door and something just took advantage of it. Some festival attendees said they were needle spiked. There was one cop that was there that said he was needle spiked, stabbed with a needle which had opioids such as ketamine and fentanyl.
Yeah,
what's that all about?
Yeah, like a lot of the people that they were either crushed or they had heart attacks. And exactly, someone had syringes and was pricking people with who knows what, and one of them was a security guard.
So how do we know that some of the people that didn't collapse weren't actually pricked with drugs, collapsed,
Exactly.
and so, you know, I don't know. They should probably be checking to see if their cause of death was being trampled on and crushed, or whether they actually had drugs that knocked them out and had them collapse.
And whoever organized the conference, or the show, did a very poor job. I mean, people were breaking through. It was just a melee. I mean, people just running to the front of the stage. Too many people were there. It wasn't done well at all. I know the guy, the concert guy, I don't know his name, I don't really follow that artist, but he did offer to pay for everyone's funeral expenses, all of that, and he put out a whole statement. Like you said, it's like half the time, like we just talked about, I think in our last broadcast, you know, we don't wage war against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities and powers of the air. And people, if you don't have the Holy Spirit inside of you, you're like an open house to have other spirits in you, and you're motivated to do different things. You know, it's almost like unwilling. Like in retrospect, it's like maybe this was a bad idea. Who knows if he really was meaning to summon these things and to have this experience happen, or if it was just totally, you know, a tragic event. That, you know, how do you not know I'm going to put all this demonic stuff up, and then it's like those things aren't going to manifest? It's just sad.
Yeah, and I have a theory on this. So I just want to throw something out here. Jimena Canales is a professor of University of Illinois Graduate School, award-winning author of Bedeviled. And he told the Daily Caller in an interview, he said, as we progress and adopt new technologies and even create new music and new concerts, the general sense of the demonic just doesn't disappear. Because Travis Scott's brand and music encourages a belief in the supernatural. It's part and parcel of the rock genres, like Marilyn Manson, who, you know, would make a big deal out of being a devil worshiper. Sure. So the fact that you're dealing with these spiritual forces that demonology sells and spreads, he says, because aspects of the demonic are naturally attractive, which have to do with knowing secret knowledge and not following the rules and authority, instead pursuing temptation and deep desires. In my research, I was surprised that even scientists are very tempted to explore what is perceived as demonic and monstrous, like manipulating uranium or viruses, because there's a sense of power that comes with that. And so, you know, I look at this stuff and I'm thinking the occult has always had its attraction to fallen man because it gives you an edge. It gives you this idea of an additional power. This goes all the way back to Bible times when they would offer human sacrifices. Julius Caesar and Alexander, sacrifices to the gods of Greece and Rome. So this is part of the human instinct, which is why, if you think about it, abortion is a sacrifice that we're making to the humanist God, the secular God, that is now manifesting as the woke religion. And we're willing to sacrifice almost our civilization and freedom to satisfy the appetite of that theology. But what I would say is, when we were in Prague, our last broadcast, we talked about Poland and about how history may be repeating itself, that Poland broke free from its communist agnostic tyranny in 1978, began in 78, with the Pope going there, and then Lech Walesa organizing the populist movement to rebel against the communist takeover of the country. I think America may be going in that same direction, where the religious leaders and political leaders start to work to resist the destruction of the nation. And see that in DeSantis in Florida. You're looking at this resistance. But I think that when you were in Prague, you experienced something, because the history of Nazi Germany, of atheism, of agnosticism, of communism, you could feel it still, the residual of it in the atmosphere, couldn't you?
Yeah, totally. Well, and I didn't realize this about Prague till I got there and did some research. They were literally given to Hitler almost to appease him to not go to war. Like, those nations were like, well, just take Czech Republic. How about that?
Right. Take Poland. Poland was sacrificed.
It was prior to the war starting. And you think about that, it's like you were sold out really essentially by your allies, and you had to live through that same type of a thing, then had to live through communism. And so one of the things is I went with you and Carl when you both taught over there.
That's my son.
Yeah, Carl Walno. And you guys both did some training over there, and it was the craziest thing because I don't deal really with depressive thoughts, and if they come to me, it's like, I don't think this is my thought, because you've got the Holy Spirit who talks to you, and then you've got your own mind, and then there are times where you have thoughts that try to get in there, and you're like, wait, I don't think this is my thought. And I really dealt with just depressive things, like depressive thoughts. I'm talking like, hey, why don't you jump out that window? Why don't you jump out that window? Why don't you step in front of that train? And I'm like, never think about that stuff. And I was super sensitive. It's like, somebody says the wrong thing to me, and I was like, oh, just wounded. And so anyways, I dealt with it for like a day, and then I got really frustrated about it because I'm like, this isn't me. What's going on? And so I said, I'm just going to go back and I'm going to pray through it. So I left during lunch, and I started to pray, and God said, look up the suicide rate in Czech Republic. And so I looked up. It's one of the highest within that part of Europe. And so then I felt like God said, listen, pray, and I want you to declare over the city, you shall live and not die. And so they had these two big, beautiful windows that opened up into the street in Prague. And I just started to pray, and I just declared it over the nation. I said it 7 times, Lance. I said, you shall live, you shall live. And so it was, you shall live and not die, you shall live and not die. And so then finally, it's like you get this sense of like, all right, I've prayed through it. It's off of me, whatever it is. And I just felt so much better, went back to the conference. But the next day, Lance, we were walking through the city with the tour guide, and we walked up to a statue of John Huss, and who's one of the first reformers and real martyrs, in the church.
100 years before Luther.
Yeah, and there's 4 phrases written on the statue. And I walk up to the statue, and the tour guide goes, and here's John Huss. And this statement says, you shall live, nation sacred in God, and you shall not die. And I was like, I felt like Elaine from Seinfeld. I started like hitting you on the shoulder because I was like, I didn't really tell anybody else but you, because it's just been this like journey. And I was like, oh my goodness, so that God can pull on people like that. If you're tuned into what he's thinking, his heart, his mind, his feelings, he's going to pull on you and say, declare this over my city, declare this over this nation that I might be visiting. And it was just profound. I mean, nations have destinies, Lance, and it's Christians who are called to intercede for them and intervene in their fate. I mean, anyways, I don't know if that's where you wanted me to go.
And cities have destinies.
Yeah.
And that was what I was going to say about Houston. To me, trying to open up a satanic portal over a city like Houston's has some pretty weird juju going on. Had weird mayors and all kinds of stuff. They were trying to force the pastors to submit their sermons to make sure that they were woke enough. That was literally the mayor in Houston, which is annoying because Joel Osteen's massive church of multitudes probably could shift the political climate in Houston if it wanted to, and it just chooses not to. Paul, that's just Joel's prerogative. But Christians that don't get involved, they create an opening. But then if the devil tries to go into a place that doesn't belong to him, then I believe this kind of weird stuff happens because the spiritual environment is in a sense designed for something terrible to take place. Totally. And I think these are spiritual battles that happen in cities and in territory. We're going to come back in a second, and we're going to pick up the subject again because I know many of you guys may be struggling with all kinds of things as we're talking. You get your own battles that you go through, and it may never have occurred to you that there's a whole new echelon of demonic activity unleashed on the earth and in the United States. And in reality, it's an invitation to go into the direction of a very exciting realm, which is breaking the powers of hell in your life. Hello, my friends on Facebook and Instagram. I have something for you, something which is going to be going away very quickly, so I want to make it available to you. I did an analysis a year ago of the characteristics of a religious cult or a religion in general that becomes an unhealthy obsession. And I realized as I was doing my research that many of the researchers I'm studying are saying that the progressive left is becoming, with its woke movement, more and more like a religion with their own sense of the sacred, their own required confessions and words, and their own blasphemy laws. And I started to realize, oh my gosh, the woke progressive left is like a counterfeit awakening. That's why it's called an awakening. And it's merging with politics to put a new form of religious merger with government over America. I want you to be the first one to understand this subject because it's already here. Go to lancewellnut.com. I've made it simple. At the top of the page, you can download the free chapter from my book that describes the counterfeit religion, the progressive fundamentalism that's taking over America or attempting to and provoking a backlash. That's lancewellnut.com. Please go there, download the free chapter on the page,